Most life insurance agents think that the sale ends when the prospect says, let me think about it. And a guy named Jordan Belfort, some of you may know him, he did a lot of good things, but also a lot of bad things and ended up in jail. He trained rooms full of stockbrokers on Long Island back in the 90s and wrote his whole system down in a book called Way of the Wolf. He says the exact opposite. He says that the sale doesn't actually start until you get that first objection. Everything before that first no was just the setup. Everything after is where the money is made. And if you're a life insurance agent hearing, let me talk to my spouse, or send me the numbers, send me a quote, and I'll get back to you, and you're taking those at face value, you're leaving 9 out of 10 deals on the table for a reason that nobody ever explained to you. So today I want to walk you through the exact idea from that book that changes this, and it's called looping. And I'll tell you what it is, I'll tell you why it works, and also how it maps onto a life insurance sale. And what to actually say the next time it happens, next time someone tells you, hey, let me think about it, I need to talk to my spouse, next time someone gives you an objection. So it's one idea, and we're gonna try to go as deep as possible, and that's it. And so Belfort's claim is this: when your prospect hits you with, let me think about it, or let me talk to my accountant, or call me next week, or I'm not sure that this is the right thing for me, this is a big decision, none of those are the real objection. He calls them kind of like a smoke screen, because if you already walked the prospect through the gathering phase, the discovery phase, properly, meaning you already found out they need what you're selling, that they can afford what you're selling, and they said they were interested, then a flat no doesn't make any logical sense at that point. Something else is going on that you're not realizing yet. And the something else is almost always one of three things. Either they're not fully certain about the product yet, or they're not fully certain about you yet, or last but not least, they're not fully certain about your company or the carrier yet. And he calls those the 3 tenths. 3 scales from 1 to 10, the product, you, the carrier, and a prospect will only sign when all 3 are somewhere around a 9. Now, what does the average life insurance agent do when they hear, hey, let me think about it? They answer it directly. They say something like, of course, take your time. Want me to send you the numbers? That's the end of the deal. Or maybe some of them are a little bit more, maybe some of you watching this have a little bit more training. Maybe you're like, hey, yeah, absolutely. What is it that you want to talk about? Or you try to battle the objection. And most of the times that's the end of the deal, because you just accepted the smoke screen at face value. You never touched the real problem, which was that 1 out of the 3 tens is sitting at a 5, and you didn't even know which one. So Jordan Belfort, he teaches something very different. He calls it deflection. And when the prospect hits you with any of the common objections, that you don't answer the objection. You don't argue with it. You don't try to overcome the objection. You acknowledge it, very important, and then you redirect. And you do it the exact same way every single time, no matter what they said. Let me give you an example. If they said, let me think about it, you respond one way. If they say, let me talk to my wife, you respond the same way. If they say, let me look at some other quotes, you reply once again the same way. And the response is, and I'll translate this into the life insurance version, hey, I hear what you're saying, John, but let me ask you a question. Does the plan we put together make sense to you? Do you like what it does for your family? And that's it. That's the deflection right there. You acknowledge them so they don't feel ignored. And then you shifted the conversation away from the smoke screen and toward the first 10, which is the product. Because the whole point right now is to find out where they actually are on a certainty scale for the plan itself. Because you have to know what number they're sitting at before you know what to do next. And here's where the art of it starts, I guess. Their answer is gonna tell you where they are. If they say, yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty good, I guess, that tone puts them around maybe a 6, a 5, not enough. So if they say, yeah, no, I mean, it totally makes sense, I love the idea of my kids being taken care of, that's a 9. Very different move there. And if they say, honestly, I still don't understand it, that's a 3, and you have a completely different problem to solve. And once you have that number, you loop, which is where the name of the technique comes from, because you loop back to the front half of the sale. And this is the part almost no life insurance agent does. Rather than moving forward and asking for the signature again, you go back and rebuild the logical case for the plan. You say, hey, exactly. And honestly, one of the true beauties of the way that this is structured is, and then ... And then you go into the next best benefit, then the next one after that, and every layer is designed to like move that first 10 from a 6 to a 9. And when you finish that follow-up presentation, you don't ask for the signature yet. You ask another certainty question. I'm stepping into character now. You see what I'm saying, John? Do you like the way this protects your wife, Sarah, and the kids? And now you're looking for that enthusiastic yes. Not a polite yes, an actual, yeah, like absolutely, this makes total sense. And that's the signal that the first 10 is where it needs to be. Now here's where Belfort makes the move that I think most life insurance agents ever make. He says, when the prospect finally gives you the enthusiastic yes on the product, you still don't ask for the signature, because now their focus is going to shift. It's kind of like to the second 10, which is you, the agent. And they have zero reason to trust you yet at the level they need to hand you their family's protection. So you have to build that. And right now, in the next 60 seconds, ideally, you don't want to like leave it until like the last part of the meeting where you ask for the close again. And he calls this the Forrest Gump pattern, named after obviously the movie, but more specifically that scene where Forrest is like standing in front of the school bus, doesn't want to get on because his mom told him not to talk to strangers, and he solves the whole problem by just saying, my name is Forrest Gump. And now they're not strangers anymore. And human beings can go from complete distrust to real trust in about 60 seconds when they're given a reason to. I'm going to give you 2 ways to do this. One way, and before we get into like Jordan Belfort's way, my way is to share the story. Like you share a quick 60-second story of why you work with that specific type of client. Like if you have a niche, why you work with doctors, why you work with dentists, why you work with realtors, why you work with divorced parents, whoever it may be. That's one part. But the other part is, for example, you say, look, John, that like I completely understand. You just met me. I don't have the luxury of years of history with you. So let me take a second to reintroduce myself. My name is, and then you say your name. I've been a life insurance agent for X amount of years. I focus specifically on families like yours, or business owners like you, or parents with children with special needs. Whatever your specialty is, I've helped X families put plans like this in place, and here's what I care about. And you talk about what you actually stand for, like real things that you stand for, the story that you can share as well. For example, if you've been in this industry 10, 15, 20 years, 5 years, you've already paid out a claim, living benefits, a death benefit, like share that story. Or share the fact that you review the plan every year with your clients, the fact that you take the call at 9 p.m. when it matters, like whatever's true. And then you don't stop there, you transition immediately, like no pause, into the carrier. And Belfort says, like use these exact 7 words. And as far as my company goes, and then ... And sometimes, I mean, if you've worked with a company that has been around for 150 years, 160 years, 180 years, just touch on it briefly, because I mean, people don't really care as much about the company. Obviously, they want to know that it's not a company that was started yesterday, an insurance company that started yesterday or last year. And as far as my company goes, they've been around since 1848, fulfilling promise. And then you talk about the carrier just a little bit. Sometimes, if it's a really sophisticated client, you can talk about their financial rating, how long they've been around, their claims paid, the fact that they paid the claim for the family down the street last year. Whatever is true, and more importantly, specific. Now and only now do you ask for the signature the second time. And Belfort says roughly like 20% of your prospects who threw an objection at you close right here. After one clean loop. Because the 80% are gonna hit you with a second objection, a different one, like completely different objection. You're gonna be confused. So if the first one, for example, was let me think about it, now it's let me talk to my accountant, let me talk to my wife, or actually my brother-in-law or my cousin sells life insurance, let me run this by him first. And most agents die right there because they take that second objection, once again, at face value and start answering it directly. And Belfort's rule is this. On the second objection, you do not deflect anymore. That's not what you do. You don't deflect anymore. You address it briefly and then you loop back into the sale just one more time. Okay? Different benefits, different angle, different stories about you and the carrier, because those secondary language patterns you already wrote out ahead of time. You're not making them up on the spot and you keep looping. Okay? Second loop, third loop, and after the third loop, for prospects who still haven't moved, that's where you go to work on what he calls the action threshold, which is a whole another conversation, I think, for another video. But here's what I want you to walk away with today. Every no from a life insurance prospect is not really a no. It's a smokescreen for a number that isn't high enough on the certainty scale for the product, you, or the carrier. And your job as the agent is to find out which of the three needs to move, and you can loop back into the sale to move it. Not answer the objection, not argue, not send more information, and then you loop. And the mistake I see agents make over and over and over again is they treat, let me think about it, like it's a real objection, and it's not. It's the same 3-word cover for uncertainty every single time. And Belfort's biggest shift in that whole book, I think, is naming it so you can stop taking it at face value. So practically, before your next family meeting this week, before your next client meeting, before your next business owner meeting, you want to write out 3 things on paper. Number 1 is your follow-up presentation, the version of your plan you'd walk through after the first objection, not before. Every reason the plan works, every benefit stack layer. So practically, before your next family meeting this week, before your next business owner meeting, whatever meeting you have this week, you want to write out 3 things on paper. Number 1 is your follow-up presentation. Like, for example, the version of your plan you'd walk through after the first objection, not before. Every reason the plan works, every benefit stacked, layered, so you have somewhere real to like loop back to. Number 2 is your Forrest Gump pattern. Who you are, what you've done, what you stand for, roughly like just 60 seconds, 2 or 3 minutes of it out loud. And number 3 is your carrier pattern. Like what your primary carriers stand for, their history, their strength, their claims record. All 3 of these have to be memorized before your next appointment. Not on a piece of paper next to you, in your head, because when the prospect hits you with the first objection, you don't have time to think. You have to loop and you have to then go right back into the sale. And the last thing I'll say is this. Belfort says the sale starts when the prospect first says no, which means every let me think about it you've heard for the last 5 years wasn't the end of a deal. It was actually the beginning of the deal, and you probably walked away from most of them. And so with that being said, don't let that happen again. There's a lot of money to be made every time you hear an objection. So don't believe the objection when they first tell you the objection. That's why the loop, the deflection, all of these things exist. So find out the real objection. Most of the times prospects are shy to tell you the real objection. Most of the time prospects don't want to tell you that they don't believe in your product, or they don't believe in you, or they don't believe in the company. So figure out what it is. You may have to hear their tone a little bit as opposed to just listening to what they're telling you. It's also the nonverbal cues, as they say. So with that being said, I'm rooting for you. Let's get to work.